Are users of your plugin making configuration mistakes or encountering errors? In this video, you will learn how to use the Gradle Problems API that enables your plugin to better communicate problems to users. In the documentation, you can search for the Problems API and click on the first result. You can scroll to the Kotlin example Here, you can see to use the Problems API, a Problems variable has to be injected into the task type. You define a group and problem IDs for each type of problem the plugin will report. In the action, when there is a problem encountered that needs to be reported, you can get the reporter and use it to report a problem with the appropriate problem ID. With details such as severity, a suggested solution, and a documentation link to read more information. If there is a critical problem encountered that requires failing the build, then you can use the reporter to throw an exception, which will cause the task and build to fail. We can copy the sample group and ID as a starting point. We can paste the copied code near the top after the inputs and outputs of our custom task type. We can update the problem group. com.gradelab.coverage.lock, and we'll call this group critical failures. Now currently we're throwing an exception when the coverage drops below the recorded value in the file. So we can call the problem ID low coverage ID and give it an appropriate description. Dropped below recorded value. Problem groups and IDs let you categorize related issues so duplicate problem messages are grouped and summarized together. In large plugins, you may have several problem groups or IDs. For our plugin, we'll only have one. In the action, when we were throwing an exception, we can use the problem reporter here. We can refer to the doc example again. Let's copy the sample. Keep in mind, we would have to get the reporter from the problem still, which has already been done above over here. We'll comment out throwing the exception and paste the sample here. Let's change this to get the reporter. We'll use the ID we have, the low coverage ID, and we can use the same message as before. We can define a problem spec variable over here and use that. We won't provide any additional data, so we'll delete this. And for the severity, we can use the full qualified name, which is org.gradle Gradle.api.problems.severity. We can change the details to have the same message as the exception. And a suggested solution to add more tests. And a dummy documentation link. Let's build our plugin again. And in the consumer project, if we look at the current recorded coverage, it is 60%. Let's comment out a test so it drops below this value. And if we run the log coverage gains task, we can still see the message from the Gradle exception. We now also see a link to the problems report. You can open this report and inspect it for more information. The Problems API is an incubating feature, and it may change in the future, so be sure to refer to the documentation for updates.